excited to be presenting this today because we do understand from our participants and nominees that the changes in the NDIA legislation has caused some confusion and stress. So hopefully you can get some comfort out of today's session. So Ray and Taylor, I'll introduce you to them in a moment, are going to take us through why change can be challenging and why it can cause us to worry. They're going to look at ways we can navigate through uncertainty and recognise ways that change can actually end up being a positive thing. So Psychologist Ray specialises in helping clients who are stressed, worried and anxious or burnt out. He graduated from Deakin University with a Masters of Organisational and Industrial Psychology. Across his career, Ray has developed his understanding and expertise around managing change at all levels. This includes the individual level, working at the Clinic Psychology Partners Centre to support people to help process and navigate change in circumstances, behaviours, thoughts or emotions. He brings change expertise at a team or organisational level, having designed and implemented small to big projects across corporate, private and public organisations. So thanks so much, Ray, and welcome along. Also, we've got Taylor, and she's a provisional psychologist completing her Masters of Organisational Psychology at Deakin University also. Under the supervision of Ray, Taylor has been engaged in professional placement with Psychology Partners Centre since July of this year. Taylor has worked in both research and mental health support roles and has worked with youth and adult populations, including NDIS participants. Taylor is particularly interested in aspects of social health, stress management, and work-related mental health support. Taylor is motivated to apply her skills to support individuals to reach their goals and navigate changing life circumstances. So welcome, guys.
Thanks very much, Rochelle. And yeah, very, very excited to be here today. Hopefully that sort of comes through as we navigate through the session. But yeah, Taylor and I have been excitedly working on this in the background and looking very forward to taking everyone through it today. So a very big thank you and very grateful for everyone that's joined us on the call today. Just so everyone is aware, if you're not aware so far, that the session is being recorded, so it can be a helpful resource that Aspect Plan Management can have in their hands to share at a later date as well.
Thanks, Ray. Sorry, Ray, I forgot
Yes.
to mention that we're happy to take questions throughout the course of the presentation. Yes. Sorry about that, everybody, but you'll notice that there's a Q&A facility. If you can type your questions in there, I can hand those on to both Ray and Taylor. Sorry about that, Ray.
No, perfect. Thanks, Rochelle. You sort of was going to cover the next thing that I was going to mention. So yeah, we'll try and cover questions throughout. So don't be afraid to pop them into the Q&A chat. You should find it towards the top section of your device. At least I hope so. And we'll try and take them throughout rather than just in big chunks, sort of at the end or halfway through. And Rochelle will just share them with us as we go through. But yeah, also a big shout out and thank you to those joining by watching the recording afterwards. I appreciate your time in joining us as well. Now today, well, yes, before I mention what we're covering today, my name is Ray. Thanks to Rochelle for introducing us, and you'll see on the call as well, we have Taylor joining me. We will go into introducing ourselves a little bit more in a little second. But yes, today we'll be going through navigating change, navigating the unknown or the uncertainty of change. I think, as Rochelle pointed out, a very topical topic to go through, given the changes that are rapidly occurring in the space. Before we do commence with anything further today, just want to pay our acknowledgement of country. So we'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of country throughout Australia and acknowledge their continuing connection to land, waters and community. We pay our respect to the people, the cultures and the elders past and present. Today, Taylor and I are joining us from Wurundjeri country from the Kulin Nation. And we appreciate that others may be joining from different areas, from different peoples and different nations as well. Now, in today's session, I'm going to hand over to Taylor in a very quick second, but we've sort of got this session in two parts, and the second session is what's going to be hopefully the very engaging, interactive kind of section that we want to go through a little bit more. So this first section might seem hopefully not rushed, but we might try and go through this first bit a little bit quicker so we have a bit more time for that second part. I'll hand over to Taylor to kick us off.
Oh, thanks, Ray. So this is a brief slide outlining our agenda for the seminar today. So to start us off, we'll give a brief introduction of who we are at the Psychology Partners Centre and a little bit about what we do. And then we might talk about psychology more broadly, how it might differ from other mental health professions, and what psychology might be able to offer you and how you might go about booking a psychology appointment if you feel like that's something that you might would like to do later down the track. As Ray mentioned, the second part of this seminar today is dedicated to some content around change and how we can use psychology theories to better understand change and how we react to change so we can adapt to it a little bit better in the future. So a little bit about us is we are the Psychology Partners Centre, PPC for short. So if I say PPC down the track, just know that that's what I'm meaning, the Psychology Partners Centre. We are a psychology clinic that is operating in the heart of Box Hill. We are a new clinic, so we only opened our doors this year in around April, and we provide a range of different sort of counselling and mental health services to our clients. We really try to meet our clients at whatever stage of their mental health journey that they are at and help them and work and collaborate with them to achieve their goals and better mental health and well-being. Some of these services that we do offer are listed on the slide. So we offer services related to mental health, personal concerns, relationship and family counselling as well, and work and stress management. So this is the Psychology Partners Centre team at current. I'll start with introducing on the bottom right-hand corner, we've got Jess Wolfson. She is our reception manager. So she handles all of our administration, all of our paperwork. If you're ever looking to book in with us in the future, she handles all client inquiries and appointment inquiries. So if you do ever want to come visit us, she will be the person that you'll most likely be in contact with, or at least will be at some point. Fun fact about Jess is that she is a twin, and she actually has a twin brother. I'll introduce myself briefly as well. Rochelle did a very good job at mentioning some of my previous work experience earlier, but as she said, I'm a provisional psychologist currently completing my placement at the Psychology Partners Centre, and Ray is my supervisor. I have a lot of different roles in the centre. Some of it you might find me at the reception and handling some client inquiries and appointment inquiries as well, but you might also find me doing some other things like presenting at this seminar today is another fun thing that I get to do. So it's been very exciting and I've really enjoyed my time here. A fun fact about me is that my partner and I in January are going to be getting a little golden retriever puppy, which is so excited, a bit of a delayed Christmas present maybe. I'll now pass on to Ray to introduce our psychologist at the Psychology Partner Centre.
Thanks very much, Taylor. And yes, new puppy or having a dog, I suppose, a bit of responsibility, but lots of rapid change that will
lots of
change in that process as well. Yes, so introducing our practitioners or our psychologists that we have on board at PBC at the moment. So on the left-hand side of the screen there, you'll see Caroline. Caroline is the founder of Psychology Partners Centre. And yes, we sort of established the clinic. I came on board sort of in the early days as well, so been here throughout pretty much the whole journey. And yeah, we sort of kicked off for around, I think Taylor mentioned a bit earlier, around sort of April, May-ish earlier this year. And since then, we've had Leah join us as well about 2 or 3 months ago. And we do offer sort of telehealth services as well if it's a bit challenging or difficult to come into the clinic in person. And yeah, we're looking to grow quite quickly and quite rapidly as the business grows, and looking to take on a whole range of psychologists as well. We want to be able to provide psychology services across a whole range of challenges, difficulties, conditions, and presentations of the support that our clients may seek us out for. That way we can meet the needs and the support for what our clients may be seeking. And we like to create a nice culture where our psychologists or our practitioners can really bring their true, genuine selves to work as well. A bit more about myself. Rochelle's done a really great job at introducing myself in a more professional kind of context. But a bit more interesting things about me more personally is, I grew up on a dairy farm in country Victoria. So country boy myself. I do live in the outer suburbs of Melbourne now because the roots of the country and a bit more open space, fresh air, a few more trees is what helps me to keep more grounded and relaxed throughout life. What really drew me or brings me to the world of psychology or being a psychologist for myself is probably 2 things. The first one would be just an infinite curiosity of people. So understanding, how people think, feel, behave, and just how the complexities of us as people kind of exist. And the second part is for me around helping others. So just being able to support others to grow, to develop, and really empowering others to, work towards living the kind of life that they want or that they hope to have for themselves as well. Yeah, that's a bit about me and myself as a psychologist. We can move on to the next slide. Thanks, Taylor. And as Taylor was mentioning a bit earlier on, we thought it'd be helpful to just quickly cover, where psychology sort of fits into the space of mental health. Some of you may be aware of some of these bits of information and details anyway, but we thought it might be helpful to call out how we differentiate from other mental health practitioners and professions as well. So if we think on the right-hand side, in terms of we'll start from the right-hand side of the slide. Psychiatrists are trained not only in education of psychology, but also as a medical profession as well. So psychiatrists can really operate in that, sort of the more physical or physiological aspect of mental health, and so can prescribe medications and medical medicine management side of things. And they're also very well equipped to assess and diagnose mental health conditions and very good at operating in the more complex nature of mental health conditions as well. Looking at the next one there as a social worker. So social workers have more of an expertise around the social, community, sort of environmental factors that contribute to mental health and well-being. And then if we look at counsellors, so counsellors, it's sort of like counselling is a skill that most, if not all, psychologists will have as well. But counselling, or being a counsellor more specifically, is around sort of providing that counsel to their clients or that kind of counsel support. So being a really good sort of active listening, empathetic, and being a real emotional support in that kind of a way, and can also help to work with their clients to come up with kind of like goals or, objectives that they're trying to work towards in that sort of a sense as well. Sort of the more of the talk therapy approach that counsellors will apply. And then when it comes to psychologists and psychology, so there is a bit of an overlap with all these different areas as well. But psychology in particular, not only involved in that kind of assessment and case formulation and understanding the different mental health presentations and conditions, but also, really adept at coming up with the kind of intervention or the kind of therapies that they will use to support their clients to navigate and work through those conditions or challenges that they may be facing. We could probably jump to the next slide. Thanks, Taylor. So and therapies and approaches above just that kind of like counselling or talk therapy kind of approach. So you might be aware of or might have heard of things like cognitive behavioral therapy, mindfulness-based interventions, acceptance commitment therapy, and a whole range of others as well. So we'll kind of do that whole kind of assessment, case formulation, and then we'll go into an intervention over and above just kind of talk therapy as well. And the benefits of seeing a psychologist is that, we are qualified experts. So we are a regulated and governed profession. So in order to become registered or to be able to use the term psychologist, is that you have to go through all of those kind of steps and hoops to be able to get to that place. So you can know that there's a really robust kind of a process, and that when seeing a psychologist, you'll have that kind of robust kind of support behind the scenes as well. Kind of follows along with that evidence-based practice, or what we also refer to as science practitioner kind of an approach. So all of the interventions or the therapies and the approaches that we'll go through with our clients will be backed or, based off evidence and research. So again, sort of knowing that there's that robustness in our approach. Yes, also kind of leveraging that holistic approach. So we know as people or as individuals, we can be quite complex beings. And so there are a lot of factors that are a part of us or a part of our life. There's our professional self, our personal self, our family, our friends, our social kind of aspects, but there's also our thoughts and our feelings and our emotions, our values, our strengths, like so many different factors of ourselves. And as a psychologist, we'll kind of consider all those things in the context of supporting your mental health and well-being journey. We also bring an array of expertise. So some psychologists may be more of a general psychologist and operate across a range of presentations and conditions. And you also will find some psychologists that are more of a specialist, so they operate more in a niche kind of a space. So that some examples of that could be more in the childhood or adolescence, so younger people kind of a space. Can be more in like forensic, so that's more around like assessment and sort of like legal criminal kind of situations. And like even just of across the stages of our life. So perinatal or postnatal kind of psychology support and things like that. And also other areas, so like organizational or like workplace kind of experience as well, which is generally where Taylor and I are coming from with our education. And of course, I mean, this last one here applies across those mental health kind of professions, but the real personalised client-focused care. And as psychologists, we like to take a very collaborative approach in navigating through that mental health journey, in supporting and empowering the clients to, not only work on what they see as important and what they want to focus on, but also what we can identify from a professional sense, what is sort of around that can help them improve and go along that journey of what they're hoping to achieve. Yeah, excellent. I'll hand back over to you, Taylor, to take us through the next bit.
Oh, no worries. Thanks, Ray. So this slide outlines some important information about funding for those of you that are interested in seeing a psychologist down the track or currently. Those that have, for the first one on the left-hand side is NDIS. And what I mean by this, for those that have psychological services stipulated in your NDIS plan, NDIS is able to fund your therapeutic support or your psychology appointments. At the Psychology Partners Centre, we accept NDIS participants and funding. However, it is important that you do check the psychologist that you are looking to go to or the psychology clinic that you plan to go to, that they are able to accept NDIS funding, because unfortunately not all of them do. So that is something just to be wary of when you cross that bridge. However, if you don't have psychology services in your plan or you have low NDIS funding, there are other avenues for you to fund seeing a psychologist. And one of those avenues is actually via a mental health care plan. So for those with Medicare or that have Medicare, you're entitled to go visit your GP and discuss receiving a mental health care plan. And the benefit of this is that you can actually receive rebated appointments, so you'll get money back from seeing a psychologist, and that is available for up to 10 sessions per calendar year. And the rebate amount will depend on which type of psychologist that you do end up seeing. Lastly, on the right-hand side, I have patient funded, and I really wanted to include this because absolutely anyone is welcome to see a psychologist. The last thing I want to do is make seeing a psychologist sound complicated, and I hope I'm not doing that. But absolutely anyone can see a psychologist. That you don't necessarily need a referral from your general practitioner, but that does allow you to receive a rebate. So if you do fund the psychology appointment yourself, just be wary that some psychologists have different pricing, but wherever you choose to go, there's a price point for everyone, and there'll be a service that is available for you. At the clinic, some people have even opted to claim their psychology appointments through private health insurance. So depending on your level of cover and who you're with, that could also be an avenue for you to look at. I'll just pause now in case there were any questions before moving on to the next slide. Otherwise, I will continue on.
No questions as yet, thanks, Taylor. Just a lot of keen beans to talk about the change and so on.
Yeah, no worries. We'll get to that really quickly. How do you find a psychologist? As I mentioned just previously, you can go to your GP and doctor, and they may have a psychologist that they will refer you to, but you can also find your own psychologist through search engines like Google, and they can link you to platforms like HotDoc, Health Engine, Psychology Today, where you can actually type in where you live and you can get access to a whole wide range of psychologists that are essentially on your doorstep. So you can read up about the psychologist that you're looking at seeing, making sure that they have an expertise in something that you're looking for in a psychologist, and that matches. A lot of clinics also offer a free introductory call too, for a short 10-15 minute conversation where you can chat to the psychologist before you're locked into any psychology appointments. And that could be a good way to assess the fit with a psychologist also. I'll now pass over to Ray to begin the major portion of the seminar, which is change.
Excellent. Yeah, thanks very much, Taylor. And yeah, we just wanted to cover that sort of content in the first little section. So obviously, if you are keen or interested to know more or have any questions more specifically, then we're happy to sort of answer any of those if you want to send those through to us by email. Of course, not just advocating for ourselves, but if you are more comfortable seeing other psychologists or as another psychology practice, then I think that's always a step in the right direction. But we're always very willing and happy to take on clients as well. Now, getting to the more exciting part of the seminar, of course, is ways to encounter and navigate change. So we're going to go through a couple of activities and a couple of ideas or concepts that we hope can be helpful takeaways for you all to then help start applying in your own context to navigating the changes in your life. We can move on to the next slide. Thanks, Taylor. And a good place to start is to consider how might we define or conceptualize change. And I guess change is a very big, broad kind of a thing, and I mean at the same time can be very specific kind of stuff as well. But change, in particular, where change can be challenging or difficult, is where there is something that is happening or has happened in our lives that is like inconsistent or different to how it was before, or how we're kind of expecting or anticipating it to be in the future. And that's generally where, we will have a bit more of a response, or like a distress or a stress, or that kind of a response to change in our lives. But change more broadly or in general is something that is very kind of consistent or common throughout our life. It's something that will happen as we go throughout our life, and whether we anticipate or don't anticipate it at all. Change can be things that are very kind of small or minor, seemingly, what might be inconsequential, although can seem quite big at the time. Or change can be things in our life that are really quite significant or quite impactful to ourselves as well. Life is very good at throwing curveballs our way. Sometimes when you feel like you just got everything on track, that life can throw the curveballs in and disrupt our lives with change. So it is a bit of an unavoidable thing in our life. And I thought it would be helpful to kind of hear what some of your thoughts would be, or what are some of the examples of the different types of change that have happened in your life recently or in the past. So if you're comfortable, if you can throw some examples of change through, you'll have to probably use the Q&A function to write your responses there. But very interesting, very curious to hear what you might share. And I want to think about, not just, change in terms of, what some of these difficult, hard or negative changes might have been in our life. Also curious to hear if anyone can reflect on any changes that have turned out to be sort of positive things in their life as well. Just looking for very varied responses. I guess while we wait for any of those responses to come through, if any do, Taylor might have some examples to share with us. But some kind of examples might be, in terms of small elements of change that we might have to navigate in our day. Might be, our regular coffee order that we have at a cafe, it was done wrong. So, something unexpected and a little bit of change that we had to deal with or navigate. Or it could be something more bigger and more substantial in our life. So things like career changes or career transitions, a lot of kind of disruption and changes going on in the world that we live in at the moment. So a lot of the economical situation. So might have meant a lot of changes to different workplaces and employment as well. So examples of kind of bigger things. Of course, towards the more very difficult aspects of change might be the loss of someone in our lives, whether that is, just through changes in life circumstances or actually the loss of that person in our life through death. And so a very big substantial change in that context. And so as you can see on the slide, change can come to us in lots of different ways. We've sort of called out 4 factors here, but change can happen in other ways outside of these ones that we've called out here, I'm sure. And these ones that we mentioned here, so change can be a planned change, so something that we've kind of anticipated and have kind of planned and worked towards, or change can be unplanned And in terms of being unplanned, those changes can often be out of our control as well. It tends to be in these places where the change is unplanned and also out of our control, where we can experience the more significant levels of kind of emotional distress or reaction to that change, and can be the harder ones to then become, to navigate and to come to terms with and be able to accept. Change can also be a welcome change, so something that we've been waiting for or hoping for in our life as well. Sometimes we don't see change to be a welcome change until a bit later on down the path. As I was mentioning earlier, we can be creatures of habit, so we can like things to be the way that they have been because it's sort of more comfortable or feels more secure in that way. And so with the disruption of change, we often go through that kind of emotional kind of experience or distress or turmoil through that process. And sometimes we don't recognize it as a welcome change until a later time. Change, of course, can also be very unwelcome change in our life and unexpected. So these ones that we've called out here aren't, separate from one another, but there can be a lot of overlap between them too. So it can be a planned change that is a welcome change, or it could also be a planned change that is an unwelcome change, but we know that we might have to go through that change in order to get to where we might want to go. Just an
So
example of how, yes, sure.
Jess has mentioned that she's recently moved homes, and that was a really significant change for her.
Yeah, thanks, Rochelle. So that could be, a number of these factors here, whether or not that was planned or an unplanned change. But yes, just hearing that, moving home can be quite a big disruption in a number of ways as well, depending on where or how far you're kind of moving and for what reason. So, we as people are complex things, but with change as well, there's always a number of different elements or factors that are at play in that. Thanks for sharing, Jess and Rochelle. Now, we move on to the next slide. Thanks, Taylor. And we thought it would be a welcome time to sort of loop back and bring Rochelle back into the conversation and hear about these changes that are readily, and from what I hear, continuously occurring in the space with the NDIA and the NDIS. I'll hand back over to you, Rochelle.
Thanks so much, Ray. And I would think that this is why a lot of people are attending today, because the legislative changes we saw come into effect as of the 3rd of October this year has caused a lot of disruptions to the way that people use their NDIS funding and what they can and cannot. So the government has put together quite a detailed list of can be funded by NDIS plans, cannot be funded by NDIS plans. And the sorts of supports that a lot of our participants have gotten used to including in their lives they've been now advised that they are no longer able to participate or consume those sorts of supports. So I've had a bit of a think about the most common sorts of ones that have caused this big disruption to our participants here at Aspect Plan Management. And essentially, everyday items that anybody might need to purchase are not funded by NDIA. And this is a big change because previously we could use a consumables budget to help support toy purchases and even technology purchases to assist learning and maybe to assist in calming for certain disabilities. And those include sensory toys and learning devices, noise cancelling headphones, which we can under some circumstances apply for special consideration for certain devices for the NDIA to look at the individual circumstances of the NDIS participant and make a call on whether or not it's reasonable for them to have that approved for funding. But there's an extra step in the process to go through in order to access those approvals. So as I said, for years we've been reimbursing for sensory toys and other learning devices, and bedding, including bed linen, if it's not altered in any way to support someone with a disability, we're not funding linen. They're everyday items that every consumer in Australia reasonably would expect to purchase for themselves. And mattresses and things like that, if they're designed to be on a disability specific bed, so a bed that might raise and lower and bend and so on, and are written into the NDIS plan. So the plan is king and overrides everything. If you've got something specific that you want, when you're going into a plan renewal, it's a really good idea to request that your planner writes it into the plan. So we do have an example of a participant who attends swimming lessons, and we are able to fund that because it's listed specifically in the plan that that's a support that this particular participant needs. But other sporting and dancing activities are on the not to be funded list. So we've had people who, as part of their social engagement funding, have gone along to, say, for example, tennis lessons and things like that, to take part in group activities. Now we can fund the support worker to take them along to those tennis lessons, but we can't fund the tennis lessons themselves or any of the sporting equipment that goes along with that. Another big change that's disrupting the way they live their life and the way they get out and enjoy the community. So, you can imagine those sorts of changes since the 3rd of October have definitely created distress for, I would say, quite a few of our participants. There's also been really big changes to STA, or respite stays. So there's a lot more rigor put into the guidelines given down by the NDIA about what can and cannot be funded in relation to STAs. We saw an update to that last week or the week before too, just giving even further guidance. So formerly, a participant could choose to go and stay at an accommodation venue of their choice. And the guidelines said they can, the STA can include food, personal needs, and activities. That guidance has since changed, and essentially it's only the accommodation, and only for the participant themselves. Relatives and other informal supports cannot attend an STA with their participant, because the whole idea around an STA or respite stay is to give the informal carers a bit of a rest from their responsibilities. So the NDIA have let us know that those informal supports cannot participate in an STA for that purpose. So I'd say they're the main call-outs, Ray and Taylor. I'm sure there might be participants on the line here who may have others that they would wish to share on here. But yeah, you can see that these are very elemental things that participants were accessing that they are no longer having, which is having an impact on the way they go about their business on a day-to-day basis and live their life and achieve their goals.
Yeah, thanks very much for sharing, Rochelle. Yeah, and I can imagine very tough, difficult, like distressing kind of an experience to have these changes occur, and I mean, it sounds like there's continuous changes that are happening as well, and for as we were referring to it before as like what could I'm imagining was perceived as like unplanned changes, but in particular out of the control of the individual as well. So these changes are happening to you, and there's not much control you have over making
and very suddenly too, Ray, like essentially we knew that the legislation was coming into inception, but the guidelines, the in and the out list were not released until literally about 4:45 p.m. on the 2nd of October. So people having a time to get their head around these changes we were given a 30-day transition period, but still, when you're talking about such significant shifts in what can and cannot be funded, it was very sudden and like jerking. So I guess that suddenness of the change, unexpected in some cases, has probably also had fairly significant impact.
Yeah, that's absolutely correct. So yeah, if you sort of have that, the suddenness really takes away the chance for a person to kind of prepare themselves for, think about and be able to process that change. So when the change comes into effect, that they can sort of more readily navigate and manage that change happening with that
And Ray,
immediate.
exactly. Our approach has been to say, well, we can't do it this way, but can we think about other replacements that might fill the gap? It might not be the same way, but think about other ways of looking at how to solve the problem that's been created here. Yeah,
absolutely. And something, I'm sort of hoping to highlight in the next little couple of minutes. So yes, I mean, of what Rochelle has really described really brings to life, the ways that change can be quite challenging for us. And we've listed some here on the slide, but I'm sure there can be many more. And it can be a very individual, personal kind of an experience of going through that change. How you think and how you feel and how you process things can be very individual to yourself. So how you might go through the changes that Rochelle has described and the difficulty or the challenges that you experience can be different to those others around you as well. The most sort of common, ways that change can be challenging is the fear, the ones we've listed here. So like the fear of the unknown, that brings in the level of uncertainty and that brings into our mind all of those questions of the what ifs and the worst case scenarios and how things might turn out. It's also around that element of the lack of control that we've kind of mentioned here. And I'll loop back and talk about that on the next slide as well. And then, change, of course, with the emotional kind of experience of going through that change and the distress can be very unpleasant. And through this process of the change, you're essentially going from an old, previous state or environment to a new environment. And through that process of change, there will be an experience of grief and loss or letting go of things that were in that previous environment as well. So it's important to recognize that, the experience and the emotional distress that you might go through can be through a process of that grief and loss as well. Of course, time, as Rochelle's pointed out as well, with the shortness and the urgency of the change, change and navigating change can take time and can take, active adjustment from us to be able to accept and take on that change as well. If we move on to the next slide as well, and as we're going through that immediate experience of the change, it can be quite challenging or difficult to see in ways that change can be positive. Often we sort of have to go through that experience of processing and coming to terms with the change before we can recognize the positive aspects of it. But in ways, you reflect on things that have happened in the past in your life, you may be able to recognize that, looking back on them, that change had also become a positive thing or a positive kind of aspect of your life that helped you to grow and change and, develop into who you are today. So change can be positive in a number of ways as well. It can be hard to see it in the moment. But it can be an opportunity for growth and development and learning. In the same way, it can help us to be, going out of our comfort zone. So building kind of resilience and our ability to adapt to unforeseen circumstances and changes across our life. And in the middle here around, navigating through change helps us to continuously build our approach or enhance our ability to problem solve and navigate that change. And so in the way that Rochelle has really described, these changes are occurring to us in a way that is out of our control. And so therefore, we can't just jump in and immediately change those things. If things are outside of our control, we might have some ability to influence the change as well. So if there is any ways that you can try and influence how that change might impact you in the end, and that can be a helpful approach. But in the absence of control or influence, then it sort of falls back to that problem-solving aspect. Like, this is the change. Unfortunately, it's out of my control. So at some point, I'll have to be able to accept it and accommodate the change. But in what ways can I still try and manage the things that I do have control of? So do I, when it comes back to the NDIS plan, do I then make sure that certain details and requests and things are in my NDIS plan, so I can still claim or accommodate these kind of previous services that I had, just in an altered way through other services or other avenues. So change can be a positive thing in our life as well, but it might not be that way to begin with. I'll hand back over to you, Taylor, if you want to take me through the next little bit.
Thanks, Ray. I think one of the things that we are hoping to achieve today is to leave everyone with a little bit of a toolbox on how to navigate change in the future beyond this seminar. And part of this includes raising awareness of the stages that we go through when we experience a change, good or bad. And by having this knowledge, we can hopefully learn how to manage our reaction to changes in a more controlled and intentional way, and thus a more beneficial way. A helpful quote to remember when we do encounter change is this quote by Norman Vincent Peale, who's an American author, very popular in the positive thinking realm. And he says, change your thoughts and change your world. And this thought is very similar to a school of psychology therapy called cognitive behavioral therapy, which emphasizes how powerful how thoughts can be in influencing how we feel and how we behave and how we interact with our world, and how we ultimately will go on to adapt to different sorts of changes. So with that, I wanted to introduce the different stages of change and the different emotions and reactions that we might be feeling in response to hearing hearing news that maybe we don't want. It has been adapted from the 5 stages of grief that some of you may or may not be familiar with. And obviously, when we do use this model, we are specifically talking about examples of change that are more unwelcome, more changes that we don't want or are unexpected, rather than the welcome and more positive changes that we did touch on earlier. So if we were to circle back and use an example of a NDIS activity that was funded and that is now on the not funded list, we could use an example, say that we really did enjoy tennis lessons or receiving tennis lessons, and we found that this was really beneficial to our mental health, our well-being, and now we've discovered that it's not being funded, and we're really worried and we're really anxious that now something that we so much enjoyed is now not being covered or funded. So some of the stages of change that we might actually go through are things like denial. We might be really confused, shocked, think, no way is this happening. This is not going to happen. They're not going to go through with it. They'll revoke it in the future. Another stage is feeling really frustrated and irritable and anxious and angry. Why is this happening to me? This isn't really fair. This isn't fair. Who can I blame for this? Who's making the decisions? Another stage is the bargaining stage, where we would just do anything to go back in time to when these changes weren't in effect. And then the depression stage is another stage where it might start to hit us that, wow, I haven't gone to my tennis lessons in a couple of weeks, and I feel really, really sad. I haven't been able to do an activity that I so loved. You might be feeling a bit hopeless, loss of motivation, feeling really sad about it. What's the point? One of the last stages of change is the acceptance stage. Now, this does go back to a couple of previous slides and what Rochelle and Ray were saying earlier, a bit more about our mindset of how do we go, where do we go from here? So we know that this change has happened, but what can we do? Are we going to still be sad about it, or can we make or explore some alternative options like Rochelle was mentioning? Maybe it could provide us with an opportunity to try something new that we otherwise wouldn't have tried, that could also be really beneficial for us in the future. It could be that we actually don't have to stop tennis lessons. Maybe we can still go to tennis on occasion, but just maybe not as regularly, or just not through the NDIS as it once was. We start in this stage, we are wanting to look at moving forward and introducing new plans into our life. Now, while I did mention these stages in a rather sequential and ordered way, as we have mentioned, humans are complex human beings, to say the least, and we don't always experience these emotions as easy as A to B to C. And some people might actually miss a stage, or some people might reach a certain stage and then regress backwards to earlier stages. So it isn't quite as always as straightforward as it looks on this screen, unfortunately. I'll now pass to Ray to talk us through how we might go around reaching acceptance.
Thanks, Taylor. Yeah, and as seen on that slide, there is that kind of experience, or like kind of an indication of the kind of emotional kind of distress or the process you might go through to then be able to kind of accept or accommodate the change in your life. In terms of like working towards reaching acceptance, there are a number of things or activities that one can do to help move towards that. And the first one is, being able to recognize or reflect and observe, those kind of feelings and those emotions of working through that change and coming to that acceptance. The more that we can sort of reflect and build our self-awareness in that way, and the more readily we can identify where we might be in being able to accept and take on the change, accommodate the change. Now, like journaling and writing down your feelings and also talking out your experience or these changes in your life can be helpful. These ways are helpful for us because as we kind of like externalize these thoughts and feelings within ourselves, then we have to kind of be able to externalize them in a logical, meaningful way. And so in doing so, it helps us to make more sense and meaning of the things that we are thinking or feeling. Therefore, when we write them down, it helps us to get more clarity about how we're going and how we're experiencing that change. Being kind to oneself as well. So just having some self-compassion or a little bit of grace for yourself. If we sort of hold on to the expectation of getting through that change, or getting to the end as quick as possible, or we're just kind of holding too high of an expectation of ourselves, then that can also be an unhelpful thing and kind of slow us down in navigating or processing and navigating the change. And then when we talk about mindfulness, so mindfulness is a very helpful technique in a number of ways. It's going to link with the next activity that I want to go through. It can really help us move through towards acceptance. Thanks, Taylor. Because the main reason that I want to take us through this mindfulness activity is because the more that we can try and kind of step back from, or just create a bit of distance between us and that immediate emotional reaction to a change in our life, and the more readily and more efficiently we can move ourselves towards an acceptance, or at least we're allowing ourselves to use more of our logical, rational part of our brain, as opposed to we're in that real reactive emotional place, and our emotions can really kind of guide us to get stuck on and hold on to these things or these changes in our life that prevent us from moving forward and accepting and accommodating the change. So we're going to do this mindfulness activity, and I appreciate we're getting close-ish to time, but we'll have enough time to go through this. Now, it's going to be like a visualization, imagination kind of a technique. And so you can either keep your eyes closed or you can keep your eyes open. Just wherever you're sitting, just make sure you're nice and comfortable with where you are. And well, I'm going to kick off the activity now, but I want you to think of or remember a difficult or challenging experience that has happened in your life, like a change, whether that's something that's recent or from some time ago. I want you to think about that experience in your life. And I want you to take like a photo or a screenshot in your mind of that experience. And even though it's like one single photo in your mind, that one photo is enough to represent that difficult or challenging change or experience in your life. Once you've taken that one photo in your mind, I want you to take that photo out of your mind and just put it into the imaginary space in front of you. I want you to give your photo a photo frame. And the frame can be whatever comes to mind for you. Like it can be made of wood, metal, or plastic, any kind of color and any kind of pattern. Once you've given your photo frame, I want you to take that photo in the frame in front of you, and I want you to hang it on an imaginary wall in the space in front of you. After you've hung the photo on the wall in the space in front of you, I want you to take a few small steps back from that photo on the wall. As you take a few small steps back from that photo, I want you to, clearly and obviously notice that that photo on the wall is getting smaller and smaller as you put distance between you and that photo. As you take a few more steps back, I want you to take a bigger and bigger step each time. So as you're taking these bigger steps back, quite clearly and obviously noticing that the photo on the wall is getting really quite small in the distance. So we're kind of creating a bit of distance between ourselves and that photo or that experience. Now, I want you to start recognizing or noticing that that one photo that's really quite small now in the distance on the wall is actually surrounded by all these other photos. And some of these other photos represent some of the other difficult, challenging, unfortunate, unexpected experiences or changes that have happened in your life. But all those other photos also represent the other positive, amazing, wonderful experiences or changes that have happened in your life. And each of those other photos are surrounded by their own individual frames as well. As you take just a few more steps back, I want you to, kind of notice that one photo in the one frame that you were thinking about at the start is kind of really small in the distance, like a speck amongst all these other photos. But I want you to notice that the wall is very, very big and expansive with just how many photos there are. I want you to notice how expansive and ever-growing the wall is, because there's all this space for all of the photos and all of the experiences that are yet to happen in your life as well. Now, when you think about or you look at that one photo that you were thinking about at the start, this activity is a way to help us to kind of try and distance ourselves from that immediate kind of emotional reaction. And we can kind of get that perspective of, well, this one thing or this one change that is happening in my life is kind of just one little thing that makes up all the other experiences or changes that has happened across my life. And some of those have been really positive. And some of those other changes have been hard or difficult as well. But I've always been able to navigate those difficult challenges to get to where I am now. And that's an example of how a mindfulness approach can help us to navigate through, in particular, some very difficult or challenging experiences of change. Yeah, the next slide there is just our thank you slide. and recognising we're very close to time. So if anyone is interested in seeking or hearing more about psychology support and services, then please feel free to reach out to us and through email or phone, and we'll be happy to connect with you. Yeah. Excellent. I'll invite Rochelle back into the conversation, but we're very, very thankful for you all for joining us today, and we really hope that you've been able to take some element of what we've covered to help you in navigating change going forward.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Taylor and Ray. We really appreciate you sharing your time and your knowledge with us. Very much appreciated. Thank you all to everyone who's attended as well. We hope that you gained something out of that. I really, really liked that last activity there, Ray. That really is a good way to put events in perspective, all of them, good and bad. They're all just part of the journey, isn't it? I remember
Yes.
Steve Jobs gave a speech to a graduate class at a university, and he talked about, if you look back in your life, a dot might happen on your timeline of a really significant event, good or bad. And at the time, you might think that there's no way through it. But when you get back and you look at your timeline, all the dots make sense because they all kind of needed to happen to have you grow into the person that you become. And that's very similar kind of.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really like that. Yeah.
Okay, well, that ends our presentation today. No questions
Excellent.
there, so.
Yeah, no, that's all right. If anyone does have any that they want to send through email, we cover them that way. Otherwise, yeah, very much appreciate and grateful for everyone's time, and hope to see you at some point in the future. Thanks very much, Rochelle.
Bye.
Thanks.
It's just us now.
Yeah, that's all right.